The Detroit Lions are poised to make a playoff push coming up in the next 8 weeks. It's just a matter of seeding at this point. They've got like a 99% chance to make the playoffs, and I am certain that they will win the division. In my opinion, there's no way that they collapse down the stretch. And even though it'll come down to Minnesota being our only competition, I don't think that the Detroit Lions give up this lead, and I think that they will win the NFC North for the first time ever in his existence. And there's a guy that we were very excited to get. He's on the thumbnail, CJ Gardner-Johnson, or now known as CD Deuce, but his X account or Twitter account still says CJ Gardner-Johnson. Now, if you don't know, about 2 weeks ago, he said that he was legally going to change his name to CD Deuce. I'm not sure if he actually did that or not. It's going to be kind of curious to see when he comes back if Deuce is going to be on the back of his jersey and if the commentators will refer to him as CD Deuce when they are referring to CJ Gardner-Johnson. But yesterday, this was obviously after the Lions game against the Chargers, CJ Gardner-Johnson said via his Twitter account, "Time is ticking." Now, of course, everybody, you can see now that thing has 329,000 views, and everybody is assuming that he is referring to his return to the Detroit Lions this season. Now, remember, we had a scare when it came to Ducey or CJ Gardner-Johnson. We had a scare in the training camp when we heard he went down, and everybody immediately made a video about him being out for the season. He wound up coming back. That was not the case. He was out for just a matter of a few weeks, and he was ready to go against the Kansas City Chiefs. And you could say that he contributed mightily to that win against the Kansas City Chiefs in Arrowhead to open up the season. And we heard that he could possibly come back. First, it was season ending. Then it was like, well, he'll be back for the playoffs. That's what he said. Then it's been moved up to December, these are all from him. Now, his injury happened a little over 2 months ago, but this is coming from Mike Payton's Twitter. I don't know where this came from. It looks like CD Deuce, which is, I got to get used to saying that. Looks like it came from his Instagram account. This is him. This is him working out. Now, the pec, from the research that I've done, it affects the shoulder. It affects, obviously, the pec muscle. And those appear to be 45-pound plates that he is lifting up. Now, actually, this thing is looped, as you can see. But he likes to... We've seen him working out before and flexing and stuff in front of the camera since the surgery. Now, this is intriguing because this guy could be kind of a huge asset as we make the playoff push. So check this out. I looked up how long does it take a torn pectoral to heal? And here's what Google has to say, WebMD. Says a torn pectoral muscle can take 4 to 6 weeks to heal for low-grade tears and 3 to 4 months for high-grade tears. Grade 2 injuries, which affect more muscle fibers but don't completely rupture the muscle, can take 2 to 3 months to heal. Now, I'm not sure what grade and what was the significance of his injury, but I would assume that it would be in that grade 2 category. I can't remember if it was completely, if it was just some torn fibers or completely ruptured. You know what's crazy about the muscle is when you go to work out and you hit the gym, you're literally ripping the muscle apart. And when it comes back is what makes it bigger. Like you're stretching the muscle out. All these muscle fibers are busting wide open. And that's what gets you your gains, right? So it's kind of weird that you can go too hard and pop a muscle. But that's not what happened in CJ's case. Apparently, obviously it was during the game. But to see him working out, we're talking about, he got injured on the 17th. Yeah, the 17th. It hasn't even been 2 months. 2 months for him to, and according to this, he might be in the 2 to 3 month range to heal. Now, what does that mean? He can come off, for those of you who don't know, he is eligible to come off IR at any time. The Lions only have 6 more people to bring up from injured reserve. Halapoulivaati Vaitai, he's done. His career with the Detroit Lions is over. He was just placed on IR yesterday. He could come back in week 15-ish, somewhere around there, but he's done. He's done his career. Dan Campbell said today that it's like the same back injury that he's been suffering from since most of his time as a Detroit Lion. So now you look at, okay, 6 more people we can bring up. James Houston is probably going to be one of those guys. We signed Bruce Irvin yesterday, so you would think that James Houston is further off than you may think. With Dan Campbell said it was probably going to be mid-December at the earliest. So now with you talking about he can come back in anytime. If this is a 2 to 3 month, let's say it's on the low side. It's 2 months this week. So we would have to open his window to return. He could come back in the early to middle part of December. We'll still have maybe 3 or 4 games left. Or if it's on the higher part of this, the 2 to 3 months, then he could come back for the playoffs, because like I said, we're going to the playoffs. But then he has to is he going to be in football shape? Dan Campbell said today about Bruce Irvin that he's in fantastic shape. He takes care of his body, but he's not in football shape yet, and they're going to get him in football shape. How long will it take for CJ Gardner-Johnson to come back and get back in football shape? I'm not a doctor, obviously, because if I was, I wouldn't be sitting in. Well, I mean, you have doctors making videos on YouTube, but you know what I'm saying. So I don't know what timetable that he's under. Is he, because when it first happened, they were talking about season ending, right? And of course, if it happened now, it would be a season ending injury, because you're talking about 2 months from now is we're looking at the divisional round, somewhere around there, or maybe wild card weekend, right? So when could he come back? And I think we need this guy. I really do, because Brian Branch has been kind of quiet. I'm not saying like he's not still a stud and stuff like that, but I don't know what's going on with Brian Branch. But ever since he returned from his injury, you really haven't seen or heard much of him. But it's different from like Cam Sutton, where Cam Sutton, he's out there doing his thing, but he's just, you don't hear his name. Brian Branch almost seemed that he's not the same. Maybe, I don't know, maybe it's mental, maybe it's physical. I have no idea, but the energy that CJ Gardner-Johnson can bring, the veteran leadership that he can bring, I would love to see this guy come back before the season ends, before we make a playoff push. And we want him to be peak in the playoffs. Now, one thing that will not happen, he will not come back early. The Detroit Lions are not going to risk it, even though he is not under contract for next year. And we have no idea what Brad Holmes is planning to do with this guy, as far as is he going to want to come back? Is Brad going to want him to come back? They're not going to rush him. The Detroit Lions are not going to do. Obviously, he's going to have to be cleared from the doctors then before they do anything. And if they don't feel comfortable, they're not going to bring him back. I'm sure they would love to have this guy back, but I don't think, obviously, one thing about the Detroit Lions, they did it with J-Mo, they're doing it with Hendon. They are going to take their time when it comes from even James Houston, right? He's not ready. If they're not ready, or if they don't feel comfortable, they're not going to bring him back. But I see this guy coming back. It's going to be curious to know. We have 8 games left. It's going to be curious to know when his 21-day window is going to start up. Jason Kabinda, did his start? I want to say his started. Let me know in the comments below if Jason Kabinda's, I don't remember off the top of my head because he's not a big deal to me. But we could see him come back well before the season end. Right now we have 8 games. He hasn't, so you would have to say he's at least 4 games away. Then you could tack on 2 to 3 weeks for the 21-day window, right? So the sooner we hear about it, the better. Will we see CJ Gardner-Johnson before the end of the season? I think he will be back for the playoffs, because our season ends on the 8th, and matter of fact, wild card weekend is 2 months from this weekend, if my math is correct. 2 months from this weekend, CJ will be wild card weekend. We could see him. I would assume that we would want to get him going before that. So, and then if we, get the bye, then, we're not playing on wild card weekend. So anyway, let me know your thoughts. The recovery of CJ Gardner-Johnson, how do you feel about it? I thought he was lost for the season. I really did. But once he said, I want to be back for the playoffs, I'm like, well, maybe he could be. But let me know your thoughts below. Consider subscribing to the YouTube channel. We are 1 or 2 away from a number change of, I think it's 15.8. So consider that. I got 2 weeks to get 200 subscribers. So consider doing that, man. That would be fantastic. You guys are awesome. Take care of yourself and each other. And as always, go Lions.